Hi everyone. So welcome to CSAT 2026. This is English practice questions. My name is Abhilasha and we'll get started. I hope I am audible and visible. Yeah. Please check if I am audible and visible. Right. Do check this. Also check if you have liked the session, share the session and also subscribe to the channel. So once all of this is done, we are very, very sorted. All right. So today I have some 5 passages with me for with 2 questions each, and we will discuss these passages. Okay. So let's get started. So the rapid pace of urbanization has been celebrated as a sign of progress. This is the passage. Take a minute, read it, and then we will solve it. So it says rapid pace of urbanization has been celebrated is appreciated as a sign of progress, but it has also exposed societies to new challenges. Cities that were once seen as engines of opportunities are increasingly become sites of inequality. So that means something that was very full of opportunity is now considered a problem also. The wealthy enjoy access to world class infra, healthcare, and education, while the poor remain trapped in informal settlements with little security or dignity. So they don't have security or dignity. The paradox of modern urbanization is that while it concentrates resources and talents, it also magnifies exclusion. So that is the paradox we are talking about. That on one hand, there is resource and talent concentration in a city, but there is also exclusion. Governments have often responded by focusing on economic growth, believing that prosperity will eventually trickle down. And yet, history suggests otherwise. So, that's not really the case. When cities fail to provide basic services such as housing, sanitation, and public transport, they generate unrest, crime, and declining social trust. So when the basic services are not being given, then there is a lot of problem otherwise also, right? There is unrest, people are unhappy, there is crime, and people don't have faith in the government institutions. Urban policy must therefore shift from growth centric planning to inclusive planning, where the success of a city is judged not merely by its size, skyscrapers, or GDP contribution, but by how it treats its most vulnerable inhabitants. So that's your passage. Let's take a look. According to the passage, what is the central paradox of urbanization? We've already spoken about this, that it concentrates resource and talent, but it also magnifies exclusion. So they create job but fail to attract. No, not this. Cities bring prosperity but simultaneously deepen inequality. Yes, they attract lack cultural integration. They attract migrants was not something that we knew. Cities have modern infrastructure but outdated governments. Again, governance was not the issue. So best answer will be option number B. The author would most likely agree with which of the following? That economic growth alone cannot solve the problem of exclusion in cities. Most skyscrapers reflect true progress. No, that's not correct. And also, skyscrapers are not mentioned. Informal settlements are inevitable and should be accepted. Again, is not right. Government should prioritize industrial growth over what they will prioritize was not mentioned at all. So the correct answer will be option number A. Please mark that as your answer. All right, let's look at the second passage. Here it is. So the question says, which of the following best captures the author's view? Okay, take a minute, read, and then we'll try and identify what is the author's view. So, for centuries, philosophers have debated whether human beings are fundamentally rational or primarily governed by emotions. So, we don't know. We've been discussing this. Modern psychology suggests that the truth lies somewhere in between. So, you are somewhat rational and somewhat governed by emotions. While humans are capable of extraordinary feats of logic, they're also deeply influenced by biases, heuristics, and subconscious triggers. So, there are other things. For example, people often make financial or political choices that contradict their long term interests because of short term impulses. Moreover, Group identities strongly shape individual reasoning. People tend to accept arguments that align with their tribe and reject those that challenge it, regardless of objective merit. This has profound implications for democracy. If citizens cannot separate reason from emotion, then the very notion of a rational electorate becomes questionable. However, it would be equally wrong to assume that emotions play only a destructive role. So that would be wrong. Compassion, empathy, and moral outrage have been critical forces behind social reforms. Perhaps the challenge then is not to suppress emotion but to harmonize it with reason, ensuring that democratic decisions are both humane and rational. Okay. So human beings are irrational and incapable of reason is not something that the author has said. This is false. Rationality and emotion both play essential roles in decision making. He has said this. Emotions are dangerous and must be eliminated. Must be eliminated is a very strong answer, right? Rational thinking is stronger than emotional influence is incorrect. So, best answer B. The passage implies that democracy requires. What does democracy require? Citizens who can completely detach from emotion, but that is not possible, right? You've said that, huh? Compassion, empathy, and moral outrage have been critical forces behind social reforms. So, citizens who balance compassion with logical thinking, yes. So, it is not to suppress emotion but to harmonize it. Citizens who prioritize economic interest over moral values is incorrect. Citizens who rely only on group identities for decision making is incorrect. So, best answer will be B. All right, let's look at this third passage. The passage suggests that the lone genius narrative is problematic. Why is this lone genius narrative problematic? So, the history of scientific discovery is often narrated as the triumph of individual genius, but such a perspective overlooks the collective nature of knowledge production. Galileo, Newton, and Einstein are rightly celebrated, but their breakthroughs were possible only because they built on the cumulative work of predecessors and contemporaries. So it's not that it is only one person who's done it, it's been a collective thing, right? Science progress is not in a straight line, but in networks of collaboration, debate, and even failure. Also, moreover, means an additional idea. Modern science is increasingly dependent on large scale cooperation, as seen in projects like the Human Genome Project or the Large Hadron Collider. No single individual could possibly master the range of expertise required in such endeavors. And yet, the myth of the lone genius persists, partly because societies prefer simple stories that place credit on heroic figures rather than diffuse systems. Obviously, we want somebody to be a hero, and that thing is a problematic thing if we are to consider it like that, right? So while this narrative may inspire individuals, it risks obscuring the structural and social conditions that actually drive innovation. So when you say that there is a lone genius, then you are actually discrediting or not giving enough credit to the backup things that are there, the social conditions, the structural conditions that are there. Recognizing science as a collaborative enterprise does not diminish individual brilliance. Instead, it situates genius within the broader ecosystem of human effort. So that's that. So the lone genius narrative is problematic because it discourages individuals from pursuing science. No. It ignores the collaborative and cumulative nature of scientific progress. Yes. It glorifies past scientists but neglects modern ones. It doesn't do that. It underplays the role of governments in science. No, that's also not correct. So correct answer will be B. All right, let's go to the next question. So, which of the following statements would the author most likely endorse? So, what would he support? Scientific discoveries are always the result of individual effort. Always is too strong, so no. Scientific innovation is shaped by collective networks of knowledge. Yes, that could be something that we can think. Large scale projects prove that collaboration is secondary to genius. Uh, no, we will not be able to do that. Okay. Look at D. Failure has no place in the progress of science. The correct answer will be option number B, not C, not D, not A. All right. Let's look at the next passage. What is the primary reason behavioral economics challenges classical economics? So what is this reason why one is challenging the other? Let's take a moment and try and read this one. Economic theories often assume that individuals are rational actors who seek to maximize utility. And yet, real world behavior frequently deviates from this model. People save less than they should, prefer immediate rewards over long term benefits, and are influenced by social comparisons. So we think that individuals are rational, but we are not really. The real world behavior shows that we save less, we prefer present happiness over long term benefit, we are influenced by social comparisons. Behavioral economics emerged as a response to these discrepancies, incorporating insights from psychology into economic analysis. For instance, the concept of loss aversion shows that people fear losses more than they value equivalent gains, leading them to act conservatively even when the risks are low. Similarly, the idea of framing reveals that the way choices are presented can dramatically alter decision, even if the underlying facts remain unchanged. Now, these findings suggest that policy decision must take into account actual human behavior rather than idealized models. Nudges, which are subtle interventions that steer choices without restricting freedom, have been applied in areas ranging from retirement savings to public health. However, critics argue that nudges can be paternalistic, raising questions about autonomy. The debate continues: should governments merely provide information or should they actively shape behavior for collective welfare? So, what is the reason this is happening? Okay, let's take a look. So, question number one, let's take a look. It claims that individuals are entirely irrational. No, they are not. It shows that real human behavior often departs from rational utility maximization. Yes. It denies the relevance of psychology in decision making. No. It argues that economic theories cannot be applied to policy making. No. So, the best answer will be option number B. Let's look at the next one. The concept of a nudge is based on the idea. So, nudge is a subtle intervention that steers choice without restricting freedom. Individuals must be forced? No. Freedom should be restricted for the sake of collective welfare? No. Human choices can be influenced by subtle changes in presentation? Yes. Government intervention is always superior to free choice? No. So, the correct answer here is going to be option number C. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Okay, this one says the passage suggests that geoengineering is controversial because. Okay, so we're talking of geoengineering. Let's take a look. Let's read and then we'll try and answer this question. Okay. At any point of time, you want to pause the video and read and then continue with the video, right? I generally read out the passage as we go along because, of course, why would I wait for 5 minutes just to extend the video? The Anthropocene, a term used to describe the current geological epoch means period of time, highlights the extent to which human activity has reshaped the planet. So it has changed from altering the atmosphere with greenhouse gases to modifying landscapes with industrial agriculture. Humans have become a dominant geological force. So we have changed the word geology also. And yet the Anthropocene also raises profound ethical questions. They are very important ethical questions. If humans are now shaping Earth systems, do we have the right or the wisdom to manage them consciously? Some advocate for geoengineering solutions, such as injecting particles into the stratosphere to reflect sunlight to combat climate changes. Others warn that such interventions could produce unintended consequences more dangerous than the problem they seek to solve. The dilemma is further complicated by issues of governance: who decides on behalf of the planet and what values should guide such decisions. The Anthropocene, therefore, is not merely a scientific concept but a political and moral one, demanding a rethinking of humanity's place within Earth system. So it's not a very easy thought that we have. So geoengineering is controversial. Why? It is too costly. No, the cost is not mentioned. It may cause unpredictable and possibly harmful consequences. Yes. It requires little scientific knowledge. No, it will require a lot of scientific knowledge. It does not involve any ethical consideration. No, we do have some ethical consideration. That is why it is not happening. So B is the best answer for this one. The author's broader concern about the Anthropocene. What is the author's broader concern? That humans have permanently damaged Earth beyond repair? No. Humanity now faces ethical and political choices about managing the planet? Yes. Climate change is the only significant issue? No. Scientific knowledge is sufficient to control Earth systems? No. So the best answer here is going to be choice number B, and that's your answer. All right, guys, that brings me to the end of this session. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Thank you so much. I hope you have already hit the like button and the share button. If you haven't, then please do that right away. Also, subscribe to the channel. Thank you, guys. I will see you again, same time, same place, Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. on CSAT for Career Launcher. Bye bye.